Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going underground to explore Coppernico Metals. They're a junior exploration company with a bold vision for the future of copper. You're here to get the inside scoop on Coppernico and its potential, from their leadership and financials to the exciting details of their flagship project in Peru. I've got some fascinating research lined up, and trust me, you won't want to miss this. Ever driven past the Highland Valley copper mine in British Columbia?
I have not.
Those massive tailings stretch for miles. That's the scale we're talking about.
It's certainly an exciting time for copper, with demand projected to skyrocket as we transition to a greener economy.
Okay, so let's set the scene first. Our sources paint a picture of a copper market that's already strong, but with even bigger things on the horizon. What's the current state of play?
Well, right now, the copper market is robust. With healthy margins for producers, copper prices often act like a canary in the coal mine for the global economy, hence the nickname Dr. Copper.
Right, so if Dr. Copper is giving a clean bill of health, does that mean the global economy is doing well too?
It's not a perfect correlation, of course, but copper's widespread use makes its price a pretty good gauge of overall economic health.
Interesting. So what's Dr. Copper's prognosis for the future? Our sources mention some pretty big changes ahead.
The long-term outlook for copper is electrifying, to say the least. The energy transition, the EV revolution, and a growing global population are all converging to create a massive surge in demand. Think about it. Everything from solar panels to electric car batteries relies on copper.
Okay, so we're not just talking about a slight increase here. This is a major shift. How much of a demand increase are we looking at?
Some analysts are predicting a doubling of demand by 2035. To meet the demand under a net zero scenario, we'd need to bring 6 new large copper mines online every single year until 2050.
6 new mines every year until 2050. Wow, that's a staggering number. It sounds like companies that can bring new copper supply online will be in high demand.
Precisely. Which is where a company like Coppernico comes in.
Let's dive into Coppernico then. They're aiming to capitalize on this copper boom. But who are the people behind this ambitious venture?
Well, one name stands out. Ivan Bebek, the CEO. He's got a proven track record of success in the mining industry. 2 multi-bagger returns for investors, in fact.
So he's not just a copper enthusiast. He knows how to create value for investors.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in his background that stands out?
What's fascinating is that he had a mentor who discovered 6 major gold mines worldwide. It seems Bebek has learned from the best.
That's quite the pedigree. It sounds like he's got the experience and the drive to make Coppernico a real contender. But what about the rest of the team? Are there any other heavy hitters involved?
Absolutely. A former VP of exploration from BHP, who was actually responsible for mapping the massive Los Bronces copper mine in Chile, was so impressed with Coppernico and their project that he joined their board after retiring from BHP, no less.
Talk about a vote of confidence. To have someone with that level of experience betting on Coppernico, it really says something.
And it's not just about experience. It's about having a deep understanding of what it takes to find and develop a world-class copper deposit.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Let's talk about Coppernico's flagship project, Sombrero in Peru. It's no coincidence they're focusing on Peru, right? What's the copper story there?
Peru has a long and rich history with copper. It's the second largest copper producer globally, with a mining tradition that stretches back centuries.
Centuries. Wow, that's even older than those Highland Valley mine tailings I mentioned.
That's right. The Incas and even pre-Inca cultures were skilled metalworkers who recognized the value of copper.
So Coppernico is tapping into a legacy of copper production in Peru. It's not just about geology. It's about history and tradition.
Precisely. And that history is reflected in the geology of the region. Peru is incredibly rich in copper deposits, and the Sombrero project is situated right in the heart of one of the most prolific copper belts in the world.
Okay, let's zoom in on the Sombrero project itself. What makes this particular land package so exciting?
Well, first of all, it's massive. The main target zone stretches for an incredible 7 kilometers, and then there's the fact that it's located near some of the biggest copper mines in the world, like Las Chancas and Las Bambas.
So they're in good company, geologically speaking. But what about the actual copper itself? What kind of grades are we talking about, and what type of deposit is it?
That's where it gets really interesting. The early drilling results are showing high-grade copper mineralization, and the geological setting suggests it could be a skarn-type deposit known for its high profitability.
Skarn deposit. I remember reading about those.
Well,
It has something to do with how the copper is formed.
you're right.
Yeah.
Imagine a giant underground volcano, and the skarn is like the valuable minerals that get baked into the surrounding rocks.
Okay, I can picture that. It's not just copper randomly scattered around, it's concentrated in these skarn zones.
Exactly. And what's even more exciting is that Coppernico estimates they've only explored about 20% of the total project area. Imagine what else they might find.
It's like they've only just scratched the surface of this copper treasure chest.
That's a great way to put it. And it's that untapped potential that's making a lot of people very excited about Sombrero.
I'm definitely getting that vibe. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we start dreaming about copper riches, let's take a closer look at what Coppernico is actually doing on the ground. Tell me about their exploration strategy and what they've found so far.
They've got an aggressive multi-year drill program in place, focused on systematically exploring the most promising target zones. Think of it like piecing together a giant geological puzzle.
And do they have the resources to keep this exploration going? Drilling can get expensive.
Absolutely. They have enough working capital to keep them drilling into 2026.
That's impressive. Most junior explorers are constantly scrambling for funding.
And what's more, they're not just drilling holes randomly, they're being very strategic. They're actively expanding their permits to accommodate more drilling and explore new targets as they emerge.
It's like they're detectives meticulously gathering evidence, always looking for the next clue that could crack the case wide open.
Mhm.
Okay, now I'm really eager to hear about those early exploration results. What have they found so far?
They've been releasing drilling results regularly, which is a great sign of transparency, and the results have been very encouraging. They're encountering significant widths of copper mineralization, and the grades are getting better as they drill deeper.
So it's like they're drilling into the heart of the copper beast.
And that's one way to put it. They're not just finding copper either. They're finding gold, which adds to the potential value of the deposit.
I remember seeing a headline about one drill hole that hit 20 meters of 0.5% copper. That's a pretty solid start.
That was hole number 8, and it was a significant intercept, especially since it was on the edge of a much larger target zone called Cascabamba.
Cacabamba, it sounds almost musical.
It's a Quechua name reflecting the region's rich indigenous history.
So they're literally unearthing copper in a place where copper has been a part of the culture for centuries. It's like a continuation of a story that's been unfolding for generations.
Okay, so if they're hitting those grades on the periphery, what could they find as they drill closer to the center of the system? This Cascabamba zone sounds promising. That's the multi-million-dollar question, and that's what makes the next phase of drilling so exciting.
I'll be keeping my eye out for those upcoming assay results. It sounds like things are progressing well at Sombrero.
They are indeed. And they're not just focused on the technical aspects of exploration, they're also committed to operating responsibly and building strong relationships with local communities.
That's good to hear. We've talked a lot about the technical details, but mining is about more than just digging holes and extracting resources.
You're absolutely right, and Coppernico understands that. They've initiated several community engagement programs, including educational workshops and support for local agricultural initiatives.
It's about creating shared value, not just extracting resources.
Precisely. And it's not just about social responsibility. It makes good business sense. Strong community relationships can help minimize disruptions and ensure long-term sustainability.
It sounds like Coppernico is trying to do things the right way, both from a business and a social perspective. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the global copper market to the specifics of the Sombrero project. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's touch on one more important aspect: Coppernico's financials.
From a financial perspective, Coppernico is in a very strong position. They have a healthy cash balance, no debt, and a management team that's committed to fiscal prudence.
That's always reassuring for investors, especially in the often volatile world of junior mining.
And remember, they have a dual listing on the TSX and the OTCQX, which broadens their investor base and enhances trading liquidity.
That's a smart move. It
Yep.
opens them up to a wider pool of investors, particularly in the U.S.
Exactly. And it speaks to their ambition to become a major player in the copper space.
Okay, so we've got a company with a proven track record of success, a massive land package in a prime copper-producing region, encouraging early exploration results, a solid financial position, and a commitment to responsible development. Am I missing anything?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, I'm officially hooked on this Coppernico story. They seem to be ticking all the right boxes.
They are indeed. And I think what makes them even more compelling is that they're still relatively early in their exploration journey. We're potentially witnessing the very beginning of something huge.
And that's what makes this deep dive so exciting. We're not just talking about abstract market trends or hypothetical projects. We're talking about a company that's actively drilling, making discoveries, and building a business that could have a significant impact on the future of copper.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Coppernico is constantly evaluating new opportunities and expanding its exploration portfolio.
Okay, now I'm officially hooked. Tell me more about these new opportunities and what they might hold for the future of Coppernico.
Well, they're thinking big, actively seeking out new copper opportunities in the Americas,
Okay,
leveraging their expertise in their network to pinpoint promising projects that align with their strategy.
it's like they're sending out scouts to map out the next copper frontier.
Exactly. They're not just looking for any copper deposit, they're seeking large-scale potential high grades and manageable risk.
So they're not just chasing every shiny copper nugget they see, they're being strategic about deploying their capital. That sounds like a disciplined approach to diversifying their portfolio.
You're right. They're balancing potential rewards with the inherent risks of exploration. It comes from their leadership's experience. Navigating the ups and downs of the mining cycle, they've learned success requires more than luck.
It seems they've developed a copper playbook, a set of guiding principles for decision-making. Does this playbook emphasize financial prudence?
Absolutely. They manage their cash cautiously, avoid debt, and ensure they have the resources to support their exploration plans. It's like building a copper fortress, a company strong enough to weather any storm.
And they're doing it with a commitment to sustainability and community engagement. They recognize that mining can be a force for good, creating jobs, supporting local economies, and contributing to a greener future.
They're not just extracting resources, they're building a legacy. They're creating a company that benefits all stakeholders. That's why Coppernico is generating so much buzz in the mining world.
Their approach seems impressive, but exploration is inherently risky. There's no guarantee of success.
That's true. It's a high-risk, high-reward endeavor. But Coppernico is actively working to mitigate those risks. Take the price of copper, for example.
Right, a drop in copper prices could make a project unprofitable, even with good grades and a large resource. So to a certain extent, they're at the mercy of market forces.
To some degree, yes. But they're managing this risk by focusing on high-grade deposits and keeping their operating costs low. Portfolio diversification also helps spread the risk.
What about permitting and regulatory hurdles? Those can be major obstacles for mining projects, especially in countries with strict environmental regulation.
Absolutely. Permitting can be a complex and time-consuming process, particularly in Peru. But Coppernico has a strong team of experienced professionals who understand the intricacies of permitting. They're also proactive in engaging with communities and addressing environmental concerns.
So it's not just about checking boxes, it's about building trust and demonstrating responsible operations.
Precisely. They're genuinely committed to doing things the right way. And let's not forget the geopolitical landscape, with rising resource nationalism and political instability in some mining regions.
That's a critical point. How is Coppernico navigating these geopolitical challenges?
They address this risk by diversifying their portfolio geographically, focusing on stable jurisdictions with a strong rule of law, and building strong relationships with governments and communities. It's a delicate balancing act.
They're threading a copper needle through a geopolitical minefield. It highlights the importance of having a skilled and experienced team at the helm. But with all these risks, what are the potential rewards if Coppernico is successful?
The potential upside in exploration is huge. If they discover a major copper deposit and develop it into a producing mine, the company's value could increase many times over.
We're talking multi-bagger returns.
Potentially, yes. But it's a long-term game. Exploration requires time, patience, and a tolerance for volatility.
It's not for the faint of heart, but for those who believe in copper's long-term story and are willing to take calculated risks, Coppernico presents a compelling investment opportunity.
Exactly. And they provide a lot of information to help you evaluate the opportunity. You can review their presentations, read the assay results, and learn as much as possible about the company and the future of copper.
So there's plenty of information available for those who want to do their own due diligence.
Yes, and that transparency is a positive sign. It allows investors to follow their journey and make informed decisions.
Before we move on to other aspects of Coppernico's business, let's take a closer look at the Sombrero project itself. It sounds like the geology is quite interesting.
It is. Remember that Sombrero is situated in a region with a long history of copper production. Some of the world's largest and most profitable copper mines are located nearby.
You mentioned earlier that Sombrero might be a skarn deposit. Can you explain a bit more about what that means and why it's significant?
Sure. You see, skarn deposits often form around the edges of larger copper deposits called porphyries. Think of a porphyry deposit as a giant underground cauldron. where hot mineral-rich fluids have circulated through cracks and fractures in the Earth's crust over millions of years.
Okay, so it's not just about finding copper, it's about finding the right kind of copper deposit. And porphyries are the giants of the copper world.
Exactly. And what's particularly interesting about porphyry deposits is that they often have a halo of other types of mineralization around them, like skarns.
So the skarn is like a bonus copper prize around the edges of the main event.
In a way, yes. And what makes skarns so attractive is that they can be very high grade, meaning they contain a high concentration of copper. That makes them very profitable to mine.
Okay, I'm starting to understand why Coppernico is so excited about Sombrero. They're not just looking for any copper. They're looking for the kind of high-grade copper that can generate big returns.
Precisely. And the early drilling results suggest they might be on the right track.
You mentioned earlier that they've only explored about 20% of the project area, so there's a lot of potential for more discoveries.
That's right. And that's why they're being so systematic in their exploration approach. They're not just drilling randomly. They're using a combination of geological mapping, surface sampling, and targeted drilling to identify the most promising areas.
I remember reading about some impressive drill results from the Las Bambas mine, another massive copper mine in Peru. They had some intercepts with over 20 meters of 6% copper. Those are some serious numbers.
Absolutely. While we haven't seen those kinds of results from Sombrero yet, there are some intriguing similarities between the two projects, particularly in terms of the geological setting and the type of mineralization.
So you're saying there's a chance Sombrero could be the next Las Bambas?
It's too early to say for sure, but the early indicators are promising. And remember, Las Bambas started with a small discovery that eventually led to the development of a world-class mine.
That's a good point. Sometimes the biggest discoveries start with a small clue.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploration so exciting. It's about unraveling a geological mystery with the potential for major discoveries along the way.
Speaking of discoveries, let's go back to those drill results from Sombrero.
Yeah.
You mentioned a hole that hit 20 meters of 0.5% copper. That was hole number 8, right?
Yes, that's right. And what's interesting about that intercept is that it was located on the edge of a larger target zone called Cascabamba.
So if they're hitting those grades on the periphery, what could they find as they drill closer to the center of the system?
That's what Coppernico is trying to find out. They've completed 14 drill holes at Cascabamba so far, and the results have been very encouraging. They're encountering significant widths of copper mineralization, and the grades are getting better as they drill deeper.
Okay, so they're drilling into the heart of the copper beast. And you mentioned they're finding gold, too.
That's right. While copper is the main target, the presence of gold adds to the overall value of the deposit.
I imagine it also makes those assay results even more exciting to read.
Absolutely. And they're not just drilling at Cascabamba. They're also exploring other target zones within the Sombrero project area. They're taking a very systematic approach, methodically testing each target to get a better understanding of the overall potential of the project.
It sounds like a massive undertaking. It's like they're conducting a full-scale geological investigation.
It is a big project, and it requires a lot of expertise, resources, and patience. But that's what it takes to make a major discovery in the mining industry.
And based on what we've discussed so far, it seems like Coppernico has all the right ingredients for success. A proven team, a promising project, a solid financial foundation, and a commitment to responsible development.
They certainly do. And I think what sets them apart is their long-term vision. They're not just looking for a quick win. They're building a company that can be a major player in the copper space for years to come.
I'm curious to hear more about their long-term plans and what they see for the future of Coppernico.
They're constantly evaluating new opportunities and expanding their exploration portfolio. They're also looking at ways to add value beyond just exploration, such as potentially developing their own mining operations in the future.
That's a bold ambition, but it makes sense given their focus on building a sustainable business.
Exactly. They recognize that the future of mining is about more than just extracting resources. It's about creating value for all stakeholders. And that's what makes Coppernico such an intriguing company to watch.
I couldn't agree more. They're definitely a company to keep on your radar.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's interested in learning more, I encourage you to check out Coppernico's website and read their corporate presentations. They provide a lot of detailed information about their projects, their team, and their strategy.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into Coppernico, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture. We've talked about the growing demand for copper, the challenges of finding new deposits, and the potential rewards for companies that can bring new supply online.
Right. And I think Coppernico's story highlights the crucial role that junior exploration companies play in this global copper puzzle. They are the risk takers, the innovators, the ones who are willing to go out and explore the most remote corners of the world in search of the next big discovery.
And without them, we wouldn't be able to meet the growing demand for copper that's essential for our modern world.
That's precisely it.
Okay, that's a great point to end on. I think our listener now has a good understanding of Coppernico Metals, their potential, and their place within the wider copper market.
I agree. And hopefully they're as excited about the future of copper as we are.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground with Coppernico.
Mm-hmm.
They've got those ambitious plans for the future.
Yeah.
Beyond exploring for copper, what else is on their horizon?
Well, like we were just talking about, they are considering developing their own mining operations down the line. It's a natural progression for a successful exploration company. You know, from finding the copper to actually extracting it.
That's a big leap. From explorer to producer, it requires a whole new set of skills and expertise.
It does. But Coppernico's leadership has that experience. Remember Ivan Bebek's track record. He's delivered multi-bagger returns for investors before.
Right. He knows how to build and operate successful mining businesses.
Exactly. And they're not rushing into it. They're taking a measured approach, evaluating their options carefully.
That makes sense. It's a capital-intensive industry. They need to make sure the timing is right.
And they're not just focused on profits. They're committed to responsible mining practices, minimizing their environmental impact and engaging with local communities.
So it's a holistic approach to mining, balancing economic viability with social and environmental responsibility.
Precisely. They understand that the future of mining depends on earning the trust of communities and operating sustainably.
That's a refreshing perspective. It's not just about digging up copper. It's about creating a positive impact.
It is. And Coppernico seems to be walking the talk. They're investing in community development programs and partnering with local organizations.
That's encouraging to hear. It shows they're in it for the long haul, not just a quick profit.
They're building a legacy, a company that can thrive for generations.
Okay, so we've talked about Coppernico's past, their present projects, and their future ambitions. What's the key takeaway for our listeners?
Well, Coppernico is a junior exploration company with a bold vision for the future of copper. They have a proven management team, a promising project in Sombrero, and a commitment to responsible development.
They seem to be ticking all the right boxes. But let's be realistic. Exploration is a risky business.
Absolutely, it is. There's no guarantee of success.
So what are some of the biggest risks they face?
Well, all the usual suspects for junior miners, fluctuations in copper prices, permitting and regulatory hurdles, geopolitical instability.
Those are significant challenges.
They are. But Coppernico is mitigating those risks through diversification, strategic partnerships, and a focus on high-grade deposits.
So they're not just hoping for the best, they're actively managing the downside.
Exactly. They're playing smart, and their track record suggests they know what they're doing.
Okay, let's flip the coin. What about the potential rewards if Coppernico is successful?
The upside in exploration is huge. If they discover a major copper deposit and develop it into a producing mine, the value of the company could skyrocket.
We're talking multi-bagger returns.
Potentially. But it's important to remember, this is a long-term game. Exploration takes time, patience, and a tolerance for volatility.
It's not for the faint of heart.
No, but for those who believe in the long-term story of copper and are willing to take on calculated risks, Coppernico offers a compelling investment opportunity.
All right, so to wrap up this deep dive, what's the final thought you want to leave our listener with?
I think Coppernico is a company to watch. They're at the forefront of the copper revolution, and they have the potential to be a major player in meeting the world's growing demand for this essential metal.
Well said. I think our listener now has a solid understanding of Coppernico, their challenges, and their extraordinary potential.
I hope so. And I encourage them to do their own research, explore Coppernico's website, read their corporate presentations, and stay tuned for their latest news and drilling results.
It's been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring.